The market was up on Friday. The Dow was up 1%, up 443 points. The S&P closed at 6,000. Oh, gee, who told you that was going to happen? Down at the bottom, that we're going to go make new highs. It's under new highs, but we're up at that 6,000 area, as I've been predicting this rally from the bottom. 1%, up 61 points. NASDAQ up 1.20%. The Russell up 1.66%. The VIX down 9.25. Below that 18 area, back at 16.77. Again, eventually we're going to get some trade deals announced. Do we see that happen sooner rather than later? Could that take us higher? Could the hopes of the China trade talks now, the U.S.-China talking in London next week, rally of hope continue? I told you at the bottom we were going to get a rally of hope. Surrounding trade negotiations, the tariffs would create a bottom, we get a massive rally. I was right. Gotten the rally of hope that I predicted. Get the CPI. It's supposed to come in hotter than expected. Was a short-term top, or does it drag on into the Fed? I think we're going to inch higher. I think we're going to get the pullback for the right shoulders and the wave twos I've been warning you about, but I remain bullish. I think we go higher, but then I think we get that pullback. After that, I think we're going to explode to much higher levels. I remain bullish. I think this rally is going to continue on into the summer or the fall, deeper into the summer as we're now in it, deeper into the summer or potentially the fall. While the S&P 500 and NASDAQ followed Bitcoin down, Bitcoin peaked ahead of them in January. They peaked after in February, and they followed Bitcoin down. This is Bitcoin futures. It actually moved to the 200, and beyond it here, Bitcoin moved well below it with the Bitcoin price. The futures is a little different from the contract rollovers, but what I wanted to show you is that, again, I talked about, if you want to see my latest Bitcoin video, I'll link it at the end of this one. I think Bitcoin's going to tick back up and end up going to one more high, up to the trend line from these highs over here. I think that's where we are headed. And the negative diversions here, I think, will give us a bigger pullback. Bitcoin, I think the S&P and NASDAQ are going to do the exact same thing. Follow Bitcoin down. Bitcoin turned around. They bottomed the same day, but then Bitcoin started leading the charge higher. They followed Bitcoin back up. Bitcoin pushed above the 200 moving average, not here with futures, but on the Bitcoin price. If you watch my Bitcoin videos, you know what I'm talking about. Futures have bounced off of it, but we pushed up through the 200. We broke through the double bottom. We took out the downtrend, and we went to new highs. I think the S&P and NASDAQ are likely going to make new highs, as I keep saying. The signals are still bullish for the S&P 500. Here with Bitcoin, we've seen signals turn back to bearish. But I think it's turned bearish, likely a wave 4, and I think we're about to get this divergence and complete the final fifth wave higher to complete the wave 1. I think they're both in the wave 1. To show you that, this is why I think that the rally is going to continue for the stock market. Look, I think that Bitcoin is suggesting it's going to go higher. I think that's suggesting this divergence is going to continue, as I keep talking about. I told you to be watching for green bars. We got one, and then we got red. And I told you it looks like the divergence is still under construction. I think you'll get it on the RSI. I think you'll get it here on the oscillator and probably on the MACD. This is a NASDAQ daily chart. We're going to pop up to a new high and then finish this 5-leg push higher and get the pullback towards the 50, 200 as they're getting a bullish cross, or just before or just after a bullish cross, just like Bitcoin did. I think Bitcoin's already got the bullish golden cross. Bitcoin's already moved to a new high. Already blew past the 200 period moving average, and the market is playing catch up. It's following Bitcoin's lead. Bitcoin's the leader of the pack, the asset with the most volatility. Biggest moves up, the biggest moves down. The market is following Bitcoin's lead. That's why I talk to you about Bitcoin. Interested in Bitcoin? You can see my latest video at the end of this one. I'll link it. Bullish reversal of conditions. Started to get that sell-off. The bears told us, here it comes, the next leg down of the bear market, and we go to new highs. This is impulsive, it's corrective, it's telling us that the market is not done and it's going to go make new highs. The bears, they can try to twist this like a pretzel any way they want it. It's corrective, even if you count it differently. Even if you say this is A, well, that's still corrective because this would be B, and then you get C. which still means it's going to be followed by new highs. If you count it as WXY, a complex corrective pattern, it's still, you've got the same problem. Complex corrective pattern, it's corrective. You're still going to go make new highs. I'm going to see new highs either next week or the week of the Fed here and hit my trend line and then get the bigger pullback as I've been predicting once this divergence is complete. Told you at the bottom this is corrective, and this is why I called the day of the bottom when we were hitting major support. Bitcoin hit it, S&P hit major support, NASDAQ hit major support. I talked all about this at the bottom. Market breadth indicators at single digits, the fear greed index at single digits, all of this stuff. So I think that this is going to finish here either next week or the week of the Fed. I think this is going to complete. I think you're going to see new highs on the NASDAQ very soon. I continue to be bullish on the NASDAQ, bullish on the S&P500. And you know, Bitcoin's signals turned bearish. It's had a 50% move higher since I called the bottom on Bitcoin, and it's pulling back likely with wave 4, and it's now forming a bull flag that I think is about to break out. And I think it's going to go make one more final high, hit its trend line. S&P and NASDAQ will do that as well. Look at right here. Green bars reappearing now. So again, this thing is likely not done. You're likely going to rally into the CPI. Maybe you complete the divergence with the CPI. Maybe this drags on to the Fed meeting. Again, my signals, which are correct, are still bullish. We had this corrective move right here. We went sideways. Eventually, we joined the NASDAQ, and we started making new highs. We got the bullish reversal of conditions. NASDAQ did it first. P and NASDAQ playing catch up to Bitcoin. Down at the bottom, that we're bottoming. We're going to have this rally. We're going to go up to the 200 period and either blow past it, stall at it, pull back, and then blow past it. Well, we came up to it, we stalled, and we consolidated, and then we blew past it. Exactly what I told you was going to happen. I know that because of the support levels we were hitting here. Everybody calling for, gosh, extremely negative sentiment. Breath indicators at extremes. Extreme fear. Just screaming that we were forming a bottom. That's why I told you at the time we're bottoming. Predicted this rally. People telling me at that time, oh, no, you're wrong. We're going to have a Black Monday crash. Person after person tell me there's no way we're bottoming and there's no way this is going to happen. Everybody believes something the complete opposite will happen. I have a lot of great indicators, but my best indicator is the herd. Because they get so bullish at tops and so bearish at bottoms. More green here. This divergence is likely going to complete either next week or the week of the Fed. You're going to see this happen. Again, eventually inflation is going to tick back up. Maybe that's this report, maybe the next report, but you're going to see it happen, and it could be this report. Some economists are expecting it to go higher. We got the jobs report. The jobs report, I told you, could allow the rally to continue, to extend the rally. Again, I continue to believe we're about to reach new highs. We'll pull back, and that's what Bitcoin's doing, although I do think Bitcoin will get one more push higher. The report came in better than expected. The unemployment rate holding steady at 4.2%. Earlier in the week, we got the private payrolls, and that's coming in extremely weak. One of the weakest reports we've had in years. The lowest for the private payrolls in more than 2 years. But the numbers with the Labor Department have been better than expected. Eventually, you're going to see negative numbers. Eventually, as we move towards recession, you're going to see negative numbers. Right before the recession starts or as we start the recession, you're going to see that happen. Have deterioration in the labor market. The numbers that we got in 2024 are weaker than the numbers we had in 2023. So we are seeing a deterioration in the labor market. Job creation. A low unemployment rate. Yeah, that's associated with what you see right before a recession starts. You get good numbers. The market tends to top on good news, on good economic data. I'm on bad economic data. I told you we were going to bottom with the tariffs down at the bottom. Oh, we're all going to die. We bottomed. We got the second best day in history on the S&P 500, up 9.5%. NASDAQ was up 12%. The historical record rally, the best rally winning streak in 20 years. The complete opposite to what the bears told us was going to happen. The complete opposite to what the media told us was going to happen. Told us we're moving into the next Great Depression. Have a recession. We're not going to have a depression. Next week we'll get the CPI inflation data, the PPI wholesale inflation on Wednesday, June 11th. We'll get the CPI right now. Month over month is expected to be 0.2%. The core month over month 0.3%, and the year over year is expected to tick higher. That's what I've been warning you about. Consensus among economists is that it's going to rise. The CPI year over year headline number is expected to go to 2.5%, higher than the 2.3%. So could we rally into the CPI and then get a CPI sell-off? Possibly, and get an inflation freakout. Or this could drag out into the Fed week. You're going to test those February highs either next week or the week after that. I think you're going to do it. The core year-over-year number is expected to be at 2.9%, above the 2.8% previously recorded. The headline number and the core number is supposed to rise on a year-over-year basis. Looking like I'm going to be correct about inflation bottoming out and starting to tick back up. You could freak out on this or drag out on into the Fed meeting. Fed will be all concerned that inflation is starting to tick back up as they always seem to be right now. When inflation's rising towards 9%, then it's transitory. But down here at a 4-year low, we need to really be concerned about inflation. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. If the Fed were a stock, I would be a trillionaire. They are so predictable. Get that, and then we'll get the producer price index there on Thursday, the 12th, June 12th. And again, usually the market reacts more to the CPI than the PPI, but we'll be watching. Do we reach new highs next week? Do we end up selling off if this does tick higher, or does the market shrug it off as we move towards the Fed meeting? We'll be watching. I told you it could be inflation data or the Fed that ends up giving us your pullback, but we're going to get one at some point after we go higher and likely to all-time highs. I think we will. In the NASDAQ, the S&P's got a pretty good shot at it. Sometimes they diverge at turning points. The S&P may fall just short of that level. It's going to be the big news next week, the CPI on June 11th. 1 week later, the Fed meeting on the 18th. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. If you like the charts, you like the indicators, let me know that by supporting the channel today. I don't have any sponsors. Most YouTube channels make their money by sponsorship. I choose not to do that. I don't want to sell you a bunch of stuff. You're here to look at the charts. You're here to look at the market, not for me to sell you something. So many shady deals. Oh, here, you can go buy gold over here. 3 times commissions. There's a lot of shady deals. I want no part of it. I need to hear from you in order to make that work. If you could take a moment and partner with me, I would appreciate it. These signals have been absolutely incredible. This massive rally that I predicted would happen down at the bottom when my signals called the day of the bottom. If you like that kind of cutting edge information, follow the link below. It'll take you to a secured site and you can donate any amount you want. Make it a recurring donation. If you do that, I thank you. If you could take a moment to step up to the plate and help out, I would really appreciate that. These signals have really helped me. I hope they've helped you as much as they've helped me. They've just been nailing it. But thank you for your consideration for supporting the channel. Thank you. Major sell signals being triggered on Friday. More about that in a moment. The market is still likely going to go higher. Probably going to top in the next week or two. Signals continue to be bullish, but we're seeing warning signs that the rally could be coming to a conclusion. Major sell signals being triggered on Friday. More about that in a second. Just quickly, here's Bitcoin. Bitcoin, it bottomed out the same day as the market, but then it exploded past the 200. Eventually, the S&P and NASDAQ followed suit. They got above the 200 period. Bitcoin soared up 50%. And I talked about reaching these trend lines, these highs, pointing to the next high. I think the same thing for the S&P and NASDAQ. Bitcoin's forming a bull flag going into the 50 period. It's pulled back a little bit. I mean, it's gone up 50%. Called the day of the bottom. You're going to get a 13 count for Bitcoin. These sequence counts going on, topping processes for the S&P and NASDAQ, which I'm about to show you. But I think you're going to break out of this bull flag, and I think you're going to come up to this trend line, and then I think you're going to top it. I think you'll get points slamming into about 114,000 there through this trend line at 111. It reached 112 there, and I think you're going to pull back and get the right shoulder. I think the S&P and the NASDAQ are doing the same thing. They followed Bitcoin down. Now they're following Bitcoin back up, and they're playing catch up. Bitcoin's already gotten the golden cross. We're probably going to see that on the NASDAQ and S&P soon. Bitcoin's already gotten above the 200. The S&P and NASDAQ follow Bitcoin after it moved above the 200, and S&P's now Bitcoin's moved to a new high. They're going to follow Bitcoin, and then we'll probably get a bigger pullback, probably going into Independence Day towards July 4th. It could peak either next week or the week after that with the Fed, but this is where I think Bitcoin's going. I think the S&P and NASDAQ are doing the same thing. My signals continue to be bullish, but I think you're going to get a 13 count on Bitcoin. We got up to bar 12 right there, and I think you'll get the 13 count and go higher, just as we got the 13 count here and still went lower and got our double bottom pattern. Let's look at the S&P and NASDAQ now, and I don't mean to bore you with Bitcoin. If that's not your thing, that's fine. But you would be wise to pay attention to Bitcoin because the market is following Bitcoin's lead. It followed Bitcoin down. It followed Bitcoin back up. And again, Bitcoin forming a massive inverse head and shoulders pattern. So is the NASDAQ and S&P. Bitcoin reaches this trend line going into the next week or two. And then I think bull flag is going to play out next week. Over the weekend, Bitcoin trades around the clock this week. But I think you're going to see it play out. And I think the market rally is going to continue. We got 13 counts completing today for the S&P, for the NASDAQ. I think Bitcoin's going to likely do it next week. I think the rally will extend above the 13 counts. This is telling us we now have a 9-13 pattern. S&P can still get a 9 count completing on a Monday. It has to complete on Monday because the counts have to be in consecutive order. Be no interruptions. Above the bar from 4 bars ago on Monday, we'll get a 13 fall by 9. Now that could produce a reversal pattern, and we could see a reversal going a little bit higher going into the CPI data, or we could get a big rally going towards this trend line and still reach this level, overthrow it if we get a 13.9, still overthrow the level a little bit and go a little bit higher. Here we had a 13.9. We did go a little bit higher. The counts are telling us that price is getting tired. Again, we had the 913 here. Eventually, we sold off and we ended up forming a diversion, so we got a bigger soft. Then we got the 9 extended on down to a 13 here. We got it with the higher low, and again, showing price exhaustion. We ended up having the 13, though, be the higher low rather than the bottom. Sometimes it plays out that way. Here we can go a little bit higher. Sometimes the counts mark the exact turning point. Other times you can overthrow that level a little bit. And it tells you either you're going to do one of 3 things. Either you're going to immediate trend extension and not get any kind of pullback or reversal. That's unlikely. It's telling you you're going to get a pullback by a trend extension or a reversal. Here we got a pullback with the 9 count. It was small. I think you complete the 13.9. I think you'll get the 9 bar on Monday, and you'll have a double sequence count sell signal. I think that will either mark the turn going into the CPI, or we go a little higher towards my trend line. These highs, like Bitcoin, could be pointing to the next high, and we are within striking distance. We're further away, though, further away from the trend line than the NASDAQ is, but we still may reach it. Here you can see if I bring it up close. We got the 13 count today, and we're at bar 8. The 9 count is on top, the 13 count is on the bottom, and today we completed the 13 count. The count started after the 9 count here in the pullback. We started to complete it, started the 13 count. It has paused a couple of times. It does not have to be in consecutive order. Can be interruptions. Count can have no interruptions. The count has to be above the bar from 2 bars ago. The 9 count has to be above the bar from 4 bars ago. I think we get above the bar from 4 bars ago, 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got to close above this level on Monday to get the 9 count. I think you'll complete the 13.9. This is telling you likely going to get a reversal, and we'll either get a reversal, those counts, or go a little bit higher. My guess is we go a little bit higher and we move on up into the trend line or closer to it to test the February peak over here. Again, we're directly below that. Maybe we don't move to new high with S&P. NASDAQ does, and they end up diverging. Sometimes that happens. Turning points, not always, but it's very common. I wouldn't be surprised to see both of them reach these trend lines and then begin to get the pullback, like I showed you with Bitcoin. Keep in mind that you have the 8 of the 9 here. We've got the 13 here on the S&P daily. I'm going to get rid of the counts here to show you again. I think the Elliott wave count here, I think you've got 1, 2. I think this is an extended 3. I think this is 4. And I think you're in 5 right now. And I think you've got the 1, 2. I think this continues. You get 3 for the smaller 5-leg count. And then I think you get a pullback forward A, B, C. And maybe it looks something like this. Maybe it's deeper. Who knows? But I think you're going to get the pullback. And I think we're playing catch up to Bitcoin. And I think it's very, very likely that NASDAQ's going to move to a new high. And very well, that could be the case for the S&P 500. And I think that'll be wave 2. And I think you get wave 1 and 2. And then I think you go much higher. I think as we pull back, you'll be seeing the 50 come back up here and either crossing above the 200 or about to cross it or just having crossed it, pull back. And I think that's probably going to take us into the July 4th Independence Day holiday. I think the pop higher continues. This is likely the wave 5 right here of wave 1. The inverse head and shoulders pattern measures very high. I don't know that we reach that level. We very well could, but we could fall short of the target. This line right here is just from this level here down to that low. So again, I've marked it here as a wave 1, a wave 2, and a wave 3, a wave 4, and then a wave 5. And this could take us on into late summer, on into the fall somewhere later in the year. This very well could be the case. You'll see signals turn back to bearish, get the higher low. The bears will say, here comes the crash. They're telling us down here that never happened. You know, the crash they've been telling us all the way that's never going to happen. The next leg down to the bear market. And again, I don't believe the bear market has started. I believe this was corrective. But I think up here you're going to get a crash, and I think that's when the Fed is going to panic, and you're going to see a move that's going to come down sharply because you've got a good shot of a very massive head and shoulders pattern developing, and you can see it better on the weekly chart. But if we do something like this, you can be forming a massive head and shoulders. The same is true for Bitcoin. Actually, you're going to see the recession data begin to show up that something's wrong. But like I said, right now the unemployment rate's down at near the historic lows. It's come off of them a little bit. Actually, it'll spike higher. The low number telling you in a topping process, and eventually recession is coming. So this is the bigger count. What I think is happening, I think that will complete a cycle top, and then I think you're going to get a massive bear market. And again, we could see different things that could cause a massive sell-off. One thing that nobody is considering right now is that we're going to have tensions in the Middle East come the summer or come the fall. It's going to happen. Predicted that would happen in 2025. I think I'll be proven correct. Right now, the Trump administration is trying to have negotiations with Iran. And now they're starting to get frustrated. They start to say, oh, here comes a deal. We're going to have a deal. And then Iran says, we're not going to accept not enriching uranium. It's going to happen. And the Trump administration will up their hands in despair in negotiations, and you will see the United States and Israel likely join forces and deal with Iran's nuclear sites, take them out. It's going to rattle markets. I'm telling you, it is coming. If they don't do it, 2025, Iran will have a nuclear weapon in 2026. It's got to happen. I don't think they get a deal. Got all these people, oh yeah, they're going to get this deal. They're not. I doubt they're going to get a deal. Oh, Iran, they don't want them for nuclear weapons. They want nuclear energy. That's why their nuclear sites are 300 feet underground in cement. There's a short window of opportunity here. I don't think the United States is going to allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon. I don't think Israel is going to allow them to get a nuclear weapon. They publicly have called for the annihilation of both of those countries. So my guess is it's going to happen later in the summer or on into the fall somewhere. This year ends, and I think that's going to really rattle markets. It may not be the only catalyst for the recession eventually start getting priced in, and later we'll see more problems with the banks and their exposure to commercial real estate. Probably be a black swan event later, but this is coming. I think we get a massive rally until then on into the summer or the fall, but I do think it's coming. If you don't think it's coming, I think you're being very naive. Now, I think we get a blow off top first, but I think that issue will escalate. And there's going to be all kinds of concerns about World War III and a regional war and all this other stuff. Probably going to rattle markets pretty good. I think it's going to happen in 2025. So Of that, we've got a 13 count completing. We had the potential of a 9 or 13. The 13 ended up overriding the 9 here. Completed both. I think you end up pushing a little bit higher. Over here we got the 13. We pushed a little higher, got the January peak, pulled back. We ended up going a little bit higher than that for February, and then we dropped 25.5%. You got the 9 count here. You went a little bit higher. I think you're going to see the same thing. You're going to go a little bit higher, slam up into this trend line, and that's where I think the top is. We're up 32, over 32%, almost 32.5 since I called the very day of the bottom, predicted this rally, went up to the 200. We got the pullback, we got the 9 count, and then we blew right past it. I told you we were either going to blow right past it or go up to it and pull back and blow past it. Correct. The bears told us this wasn't going to happen. We're up 32 stinking percent. We only dropped 25.5%. We're back up near the highs. We've nearly recovered the entire thing. We're going to likely come up here, put the top in, and then at that trend line, it's likely the neckline, and you're probably going to see this pullback as we go into Independence Day in all likelihood, and you're going to get this bullish cross eventually as we pull back towards it, or maybe before we pull back, before we reach that level, but you're going to see a test of this 200 period and likely come back down. And maybe it's more shallow like this. Maybe it's something deeper like I've marked here, a little bit deeper. Maybe it's something more deep. And we get an unbalanced pattern where the right shoulder is much deeper than the left. Certainly possible. People in technical analysis say, oh, you can't do that. They have to be equal. Poppycock. I've been doing this decades. I've seen lots of inverse head and shoulder patterns that have been unbalanced. It's very common. I think this is about to conclude. Maybe that concludes with the inflation data next week. Maybe it drags out onto the Fed, but I think you're going to reach this level. Maybe we see NASDAQ overthrow the trend line a little bit. Certainly possible. About that possibility of Bitcoin, but I think this trend line, these highs, are pointing to the next high. And again, perfect inverse head and shoulders. The bears are going to scream, oh, it's a double top, or if they mark this whole thing as a top, or this is a top and a top over here marking the December, and then the January February is one peak, and they'll say a triple top, whatever they're going to say. Again, you're likely going to pull back. So see, we told you that here comes the next leg down of the bear market. Again, the rally that they told us was never going to happen. We're probably going to make new highs. They told us that was never going to happen. They told us we topped over here. And again, they told us we were going to crash at the bottom. I told you that we were bottoming that day. We were at major support levels. We got bottoming signals at that time. That's what I think about what's about to happen. I think you're going to see sellers profit taking happen here. And again, maybe that's an uptick with the inflation data. Maybe it drags out onto the Fed. I've seen posts online, social media, people saying, oh, we're about to get the rate cuts. Here they come. Everybody's cutting. We have Europe cutting. We have all these places cutting. And again, it's going to do what they always do and make monetary policy mistake after monetary policy mistake. You can be sure of it. We've had a 25% drop here. We had a 21% drop on the S&P, and the Fed did not panic. So this is likely not the kickoff of the bear market. I'm going to pull back, and then they're going to think it again, and then finally when we go to new highs, after the highs we make right now, then the bears will throw in the towel. They always do it every market top. Third will get complacent. They'll make the real top. You're going to see it, and it's likely going to be massive decline. Now, Black Friday was 25% in one day. It's something very powerful to the downside once we get the top in, but I don't think we're there. I remain bullish. I think we get a pop. I think we get a pullback. Then I think the advance resumes. Getting a 9 fall by 13 now, and the 9 and the 13 today, we completed both today. I think we end up going a little bit higher. Is it the inflation data that gives us the peak? Rally with that, and shortly thereafter with something else, or maybe with the Fed. We'll see. Bullish, but the time is short, and we're coming to my target level, which is the trend line, which I've been talking about. Down at the bottom, we're going to go make new highs. We're about to do it. Right about the rally, I'm going to be right about the new highs. Be right about the pullback and the massive inverse head and shoulders. Here's a NASDAQ Elliott wave count. Again, I think you have this massive inverse head and shoulders. I think you're going to peak right here. I think you'll pull back to the moving averages or just beyond them if we get a deeper pullback. Looking at our Fibonacci retracements once we get our peak in, and we'll be watching those. Shallow retracement like we had over here, then maybe you hit the 38.2 or the 50% retracement rather than the 61.8 fib or the 78.6 Fibonacci, which would be a deeper retracement. Regardless, I think you've got one on NASDAQ. I think you're about to complete it. I think you get two, and then I think you get three. And again, the inverse head and shoulders, if you just take the low to the high, it's measuring way up here. I think that's possible. Not reach it, but I think it's still very, very possible. You get the wave 3, you get the 4, and then you get the 5. And this could take us again on into the summer. This could happen quicker than I've marked here. I have right here this going on into September. It could be quicker, it could be longer. We're traders. We look at probability, we look at support and resistance levels, we look at Fibonacci extension levels, things like that. How long it takes to get to these levels, and if we reach them, we may fall short of them. Have an extended wave 1, 3, but then have a 5 or something. So again, it could play out a number of different ways. Have realistic expectations. I think you're about to get the top here, and that can happen either next week or the week of the Fed, and then I think you're going to pull back. And then again, that's probably going to be towards Independence Day, maybe just before it, maybe just after it, sometime in that neighborhood. I think you could pull back for a few weeks. This is what I think is going on for the NASDAQ. I think it's a final phase of the blow-off top. Over here, when we get here, whether that's in August, whether that is in September, October, whatever, I think you're going to get this massive crash, be forming a massive head and shoulders pattern where this could be the left shoulder. It very well could be a massive head and shoulders topping pattern. As we have the inverse head and shoulders here, it could evolve, this whole thing over time could evolve into a large topping process. We completed wave 3 over here. I think you got 4 here with the ABC move, and I think you're getting this 5-leg impulse move that's going to give us the 5 and complete the cycle top. Like once we get up here and we start to get a drop, and when we get up here and we start to drop maybe 20%, maybe more, actually with the first drop, that's when I think the Fed's going to panic. The Fed did not panic here. They're likely going to panic when we get up into this area over the summer or the fall. And if we can rally with some kind of good tariff announcement, maybe a deal being reached, or with the CPI, the catalyst may be, we'll be watching, can we reach this level? These potential rising wedges, the RSI could form a divergence and we could top just under this level, or again, we might move to a new extreme, form a divergence, and then begin to sell off. The same thing with the MACD. We are likely going to form this larger divergence, as I keep talking about. See the same thing happen on the Awesome Oscillator, which I'm showing you in this video, and I've been showing you in every single video. Looking at for divergences on the MACD here, already making a lower high. I think it's going to recycle back up above the signal line myself and be better defined, but I think we're going to become closer, get closer to this trend line right here, the red one here, from these previous highs, and maybe we reach it, maybe we just fall short of it. But the RSI could form a divergence here, or it may just move to an extreme. For the NASDAQ, it's got a rising wedge. It's got a divergence here, but it's probably not done yet. We're probably still going to turn back up here, and again, up seeing a better looking divergence here on the MACD. And again, we've got one on the RSI. Maybe it moves to a new extreme, or maybe becomes better defined. I'll be watching. We can reach this level. My guess is we're going to, but we did trigger those sell signals on Friday with the sequence counts. We got 13 counts for both the NASDAQ and the S&P 500.